Hello, everyone. I believe this might be the best looking map I've ever created. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna walk through how I did it. I'll show the map a bit here, then switch to World Machine, World Painter, and yeah, it's not done yet still. There's still stuff I'd want to do with the rivers mainly. The rivers are very boring, as you'll see, but that will come as I continue to finish my uh, script that I used to do this. So this is fully generated from World Machine. World Machine produces all the mappings for the train, the snow, the plants, the rocks, everything you see here. It's all mapped with World Machine. That then all gets imported into World Painter with a script, and the output is what you see here. All I pretty much have to do is click build in World Painter and it builds the whole map. This is a 10,000 by 10,000 block map, very large. Not something you can build without a pretty crazy computer. This uses about up to 200 or so gigabytes of a combination of RAM and storage to build in World Machine. World Painter uses, I've seen, up to like another 90 gigabytes of RAM to export it. Um, the the game runs pretty well. My computer isn't that crazy, but it this is some of the smoothest gameplay in this game I've ever actually had, and it just shows like how good the Voxy mod is. Um, combined with sodium and iris. Um, so yeah, I'll just show you kind of around. I've gotten it now to where the mountains are very spiky. I like these kind of very thin ridges, thin line ridges, and then below, within that you then have groupings of trees. The trees kind of decrease in density as you go farther up the mountain. In general, I think I need to do that a bit better, but it's pretty close to what I want. The rivers kind of flow and meander. It doesn't show there's water because for whatever reason, this shader pack doesn't like to show the water, but there is water in all the rivers. They all meander down to the center, and they all flow out towards the ocean. So you can start at any one of these little streams and eventually make your way all the way to the ocean. Um, if you see any lag spikes, it's probably because I'm recording. Without recording, it runs even better than what you see here, if that's even possible. Um, I love this haze also that you get at the base. I think that's one of the cloud types, and I might actually increase how thick that is because I really like that. Um, you can see the rivers go all the way to the end. There's still some work to do, like I gotta fix that where it flows into the ocean and whatnot. There's beaches. There's still a few problems with the edges of the rivers too, where it puts like plants along it, but I can fix that. Um, yeah, it's. I want to say this is without a doubt the best terrain I've ever produced. I think it's. I've gotten it down to a science of how I do things using these sets of programs, and it's turned out really well. There is, like, certainly I think this might have like too many tall quote mountains. I could kind of lower them down a bit towards the edge. I might do that, but it's certainly getting there in terms of how I want it to look. Um, yeah, but uh, now that seen it, I guess I'll show you how I did it. So, starting in World Machine, we have this massive TMD file, but I'll try to walk through what's going on here. So, the beginning, we have basic just terrain creation. This creates the main look of the terrain. I haven't built it, so it's low res, but you can kind of get an idea. I do not like that my map is a perfect square. Obviously, I can easily fix that by changing some of these shapes. I have these two shapes also. Basically, I create this to cut off anything along the edge so that there's water all around the map. Um, then here I have some more generators. This one produces a small little kind of additional mountain, which then gets curved and added to the main one to produce this. The main one, by the way, is basic noise, which also feeds the mountain generation. So, what I found is it kind of works best when everything kind of feeds each other. So, if you're going to add terrain together, you want the added to terrain to kind of come from the original terrain. So that way, the high areas on the original terrain are still high after you add them. You see here how like it went from this to this. So the high points are still high. You could get away with something similar with a curve, but I think this produces better looking mountains. Um, I have these checkpoints interspaced. I don't know how much they help, but I thought they might help produce or conserve memory when building. The main portion of the map is actually this. So this is an instance scattering system. So it takes your map, blurs it, selects aspect, and then there's this ramp thing. And depending on the ramp, it'll change how these instances are placed. So this is what produces kind of a really nice mountain looking thing, I guess you could call it, spreading outwards from the high points of the terrain is the best way to describe that. If you change the offset of this ramp, you can get it to like twist and stuff. So if I show you this, um if I like twist it around a bit here differently, go to the instant scattering, now you can see it's a bit twisted. So it'll change like kind of how they're twisting it. Kind of, you can get some really cool effects with this. But this is, I think, the main core component to making large scale maps. You're going to need something like this because in real life, mountains follow a very predefined, not like defined, but it's kind of like a spider web kind of thing, right? Where they're all kind of flowing outwards from the center points, the ridge lines. So you can see they're all kind of flowing to the sides, and you can't really replicate that with basic Perlin noise. It's going to have some degree of randomness. With this, you can input a height map and kind of get um, flowing lines how you want it. I don't know. Next, we got some basic processing on that just to kind of blow it up a bit. We have our height inputs from earlier, our mask from earlier, those mountains from earlier. That all gets fed into this. And this is a very simple setup that I found that makes these nice ridges. So first you get your uh here I've just kind of cut it down. So I took it from that to that. And then you put it in a one of the older erosions called uh well worn, I think, and that's what's going to produce these nice ridges. Then you do a thermal weathering, and that's going to get you very nice, smoothed looking outputs. And I can actually build a low res version of this here real quick. So if you look at this, you can get a very nice looking kind of mountains. You still need to do some erosion on this, but this is how you gain get the ridges. And of course, they're all kind of flowing out from that center point that was those high points that were defined on the original terrain. Then, of course, I just add that on top of the original terrain, and it's going to look something like this. Okay, so this is basically the base for the rest of the map or the rest of the stuff. So then I do some terracing. I tend to focus the terracing towards the higher peaked areas. I don't want terracing everywhere, but I do want it. I think it looks quite nice. I have a bit of randomness going into the terrace. I have an erosion. This is a very basic one, a bit of channeling. but not too much. And this will just kind of smooth those ridges and smooth out the ridges with the thermal weathering from earlier, so it's not as obvious. Um, Next, I've got a coast erosion flow restructure, pretty standard stuff. That's basically the flow restructure sets up the terrain so that I can place rivers on it. Otherwise, the rivers are gonna form lakes, and I don't really like massive giant lakes everywhere. So I I do it this way. Um, the downside is there is no lakes, but I'm willing to deal with that. I just have all the rivers kind of flow out. Next I do snow, very simple. I've done a whole video on this. Next I do rivers. I think I've also done a video on this. It's just create water how much you want. Then I have a beach. This kind of selects where I want the sand to be placed. You can see here, this is kind of what it ends up looking like. Uh, um, Then I have a layer mask. This just creates the two masks I use for farther processing. So for this one is for trees. So I want the trees kind of everywhere, and then the edge of the beach is kind of blurred because I can have some trees on the beach, but not too many. Um, and then I don't want any trees anywhere near the rivers. And maybe that's why I think I need to fix that. So I noticed I'm blurring the rivers. I think I have to blur it first, then mask the rivers on top after. Now that I look at it. So that's something for me to fix. I just realized that. That's why you're seeing rivers with the lines along the sides. So certainly I'm gonna fix that. That all feeds into the outputters. So down here I have a scene view. If I enable this, I disable it while building because it blows up your memory usage, and I don't like that. Um, but so here's what it's gonna kind of look like. The snow isn't perfectly accurate, but it's relatively close. The beach is also a bit off, I would say, because it doesn't like to really show the kind of I don't know. It's a slightly off, but it's close enough where I can get a general idea of what the terrain's gonna look like. And of course, then we have all of our layers. So first of all is the terrain. This is just gonna take it, select slopes, convert that to colors. You can see all the blocks I'm using here. It's just very simple. Next I have basic layers, tall grass, grass, rocks. That's gonna, from those masks from earlier are used here to kind of, first of all, I mask it on top of grass and moss blocks. I don't want grass everywhere. Then I multiply it with that mask from earlier, which also cuts off um, a lot of the other stuff. Um, I do some slope selection, some rescaling to kind of darken it. So the way this works is the brightness of the pixel is going to determine the chance of something being placed there. So for grass, it is a binary layer. So I actually have a macro here that takes this continuous image, which is going to have values 0 to 255. And then based on each value, that 0 to 255 value is going to determine the probability distribution of a pixel being placed there. And the pixel is going to be a 1 or 0. So you can kind of see how that feeds in to this image. It's actually very simple how it does it. I just made it a macro because I use it a few times. So all it is you generate a big noise map, and you just want to make sure it's true noise. And I've built this at full res. It might be that I'm too bright actually, and I need to tone it down, but it is what it is. It then compares the noise to any. So the noise will take values from 0 to 255. So then if I just do a less than compare, so if the the height map from earlier, which is a probability distribution map, if that's if the pixel is greater or less than that, then it outputs it. So that gives you basically a direct probability distribution to height map height map to pixelated distribution converter. It's the best way to describe it, but I don't know why it doesn't want. Oh, there it is. So you can see it follows the original map, but now they're all pixels, and it'll place grass only in that spot. So I have that for the grass layer, the tall grass layer, and then of course I have it for I have a continuous layer for bushes. So some of the layers are continuous, other ones are binary, and I can do it kind of I can do both with this. So then I have the tree layer. This is just doing a bunch of height slope selection. It looks complicated, but it's ultimately pretty simple. It then does some basic noise to kind of make the output a bit random so there's not stuff everywhere, you know. I might also add this to the grass and the bushes up there, but for now it's good enough because they end up they're so sparse that it already looks random enough. You don't need more randomness, um, in my opinion. But I do it for the trees, and then multiply with a bunch of the masks from earlier. Um, I tend to use one thing. I tend to use linear curves to kind of split up stuff. I should. There's other ways of doing this, like putting a route point and stuff, but this makes it easy to kind of swaps things out. Like if I want to add an additional processing layer between this and all of these, I can just place it there and it'll connect everything for me and do it right. Or I can connect it to that, then connect that to those. It just makes it slightly easier for me. I could also convert a bunch of these into macros, but the thing is, I use like for example this one. I use so many of the intermediate values from that one to get this one, and then like some of these, especially the rivers, beaches, snow, I use pretty much all of the intermediate values as you can see for like different tasks later. Um, so I can't really I could convert them to macros, but in the future I might need something else and then I have to expose another parameter and it's or another input or output and it's just a pain. And plus I have to click in like macros. These I'm never going to really touch that probably because it works and I know it works because I've outputted maps with it. But something like any of these other ones I might mess with very commonly. Um, the bushes is similar to the trees, just a bit simpler. On it goes so the trees I've kind of placed them more towards the base, the lower height areas, as you can see. The bushes I tend to place them more towards the middle of the map, and I might go even a bit higher, but I wanted to kind of I want to make a bunch of medium-sized trees to kind of go from like high to medium to small trees as you kind of go farther and farther up in elevation, and that kind of replicates how it works in the world. Like, for example, um, so set the time today. Okay, so down there, there's a lot of trees because it's low elevation. As you go up farther and farther, they kind of become more sparse, and I've done that intentionally. See here, a bit of sparsity there, a bit of sparsity there. But I don't think they're sparse enough. I could make them more sparse, obviously. But what I really want to do is make another tree set that includes shorter trees. So you'll go from like tall trees and it'll kind of morph into short, medium trees, and then or shorter trees, and then maybe I'll make a third one that's really short trees, like kind of like these bushes, and then at the top you'll just see a very sparse layer of really short ones. I don't know if I'm going to do that soon or whatever, but that's just kind of ideas I've had because now I can get super fine control over the the distribution of the different plants. and I can get crazy with it. Like I pretty much can do whatever I want. Um, so I'm really tempted to do a lot more with this. Make even more sparsity. Make it kind of look as close to kind of a real life thing as possible. These rivers, I am working on a program that detects where the rivers are, adds like additional layers to that, and my program will then output its own height map, which will then be fed into World Painter, like everything else, and then it'll add it to this. Um, that's still in progress though, so that may or may not be done for a while. We'll see. Um, Back to World Machine. So that's basically the overview. I just wanted to do relatively quick overview. I might go into detail on this in a different video. This again, I might release it. I might not. I don't, because a lot of these tweaks that I've done it's just stuff that's taken me forever, and I don't really know if I want to release the full thing comfortably. It's kind of like when I do drawings, I don't like to release the full like PSD or .clip file, right? But I'll show how I did it. I'll go through and show every step. Um, yeah, there's that. Any of the code I've written though, I probably will release that on my GitHub because it's already in a GitHub repo. I just have to make it public. Um, yeah. So then on to World Painter. So this is the World Painter side of things. Everything is auto-generated by the script. The script just basically does all the World Painter operations for you. So all you have to do is run the script, and it'll create everything. So you go to Tools, Run Script. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to rerun it, but it produces something like this. It has all the layers placed everywhere, all the colors done, all the terrain done, everything that I previously outputted from World Machine. It just places all of it. Um, got all your layers and whatnot. Then pretty much all I have to do is go to export's new Minecraft map. I go to surface, I select this to make sure the frost is smooth because that's the only thing I haven't found. You could probably default it even, but I haven't really bothered. It's literally like 1 second to do that. And then I make sure that the layer export order is the one I want. Now the script will import the layers in a specific order, and it has a config file. You can set that. So um, that is the default order that I found. Whatever you set in the config file, that ends up being the ordering. Maybe that's just random. I'm looking at it here 1 to 1 on my other monitor, and it looks to be in the exact same order. So I haven't really tested that, but so far it's been good. Um, this is the ordering that I like, so I just leave that as is, and then I click export, it makes the map. Then I go into the map, I do voxy, import, world, and then the name of it. And then it'll import it all 10,000 by 10,000 blocks. It takes like 5 minutes, and boom, I can just fly around and view the terrain. It's like this process could not be more seamless. I think I've gotten it down to where the whole thing is just so easy. Like I really like, because World Machine is very efficient at creating the distribution maps of where I want stuff to go, and I like very fine control over that. But I don't want to have to go through and hand paint a 10,000 by 10,000 map, right? I want to mathematically determine where I want stuff to go, and I can do that, or programmatically, mathematically, whatever, and I can do that with World Machine. Now, it doesn't do everything. Again, the rivers, there's a lot of very specific stuff I want to do with the rivers, and that's going to require a separate program that I'm still working on um, to do that. But this gives me about as fine of control as I need in general over everything. Um, and it makes the whole process faster. So I can quickly, everything's configurable with the script too. So if I want to color everything differently, I just change the config file in the script and it'll output. I've specifically named everything in such a way that it's like easy to configure. So the terrain files are just named terrain underscore 1 2 3 4, so so on. The layers are underscored 1 2 3 4, so on, right? So the config file maps the um the name to the name of the Minecraft block, right? Or the specifically the name of the World Painter custom terrain file to the value. And I'll go more detail of that. I'll do a separate video when I'm done the program and I'll talk about the scripts, and that's when I'll be releasing the code. So, and at that point I will go deeper into that. The reason I'm not going to do that right now is there's more that I also kind of want to do. So I could add stuff where, like, you could take an image generated by World Machine, because World Machine can generate really beautiful looking color maps. You could take that, put it through a nearest color algorithm, right? And then map that image to the average. Every Minecraft block has an average color, right? So you could do the image to the Minecraft block that has the nearest average color, and then you can get fully colorable terrain using World Machine without having to do something like this and specify every single terrain separately. So that's an addition that I might add, I might not. The the one thing that I'm very particular about is I don't like using non-natural blocks for natural terrain. So you'll never see me use wool or like clay. Clay I might use, but green clay for grass, absolutely not. Um, Wool for like gray wool for this, absolutely not. Like, I prefer using natural blocks so it looks nice up close. It looks nice with like resource packs and whatnot. And speaking of resource packs, um, I can load. I did 256 before, and it actually runs well, but I'll just load 128 because it's way faster to load. Um, so now that that's loaded, you can see here, it looks nice with Patrix, right? Because all the blocks are natural, as they should be. I love the bushy tree leaves, but you can get that with the vanilla tweaks resource pack as well. I just haven't loaded it yet. So that's something I could have done, but I kept forgetting. Um, yeah, but that's where it's at right now. All of this is just generated. I can add more trees, less trees to my schematic files or my schematic layers, right? World Painter layers. It'll then update whenever I rebuild the map. Um, I want to do flowers also. So with flowers, World Painter has the ability to make a layer that has all the flowers in it. However, I don't particularly like the idea of having fully random flowers, like a red one next to a yellow one next to a blue one, right? I want like patches of the same type of flower. If I go to like um for example, if I wanted to do lilacs, right? I don't want just one of them. I kind of want like a patch of them, like that, right? Some random patch. Now I can totally do that, but it's gonna mean that in World Machine I have to make a separate layer for each flower, and then I'm gonna have little randomized patches of them generated by World Machine. That's pretty easy to do, but I can only do one flower per layer, I think. I'm trying to still figure out if there's a way I could put all of them in one layer, because World Machine or World Painter has the ability, if I edit one of these ground cover layers, you can add flowers to them, but they're gonna be randomized. I want them I want them randomized, but in a kind of more of like a purling noise type of randomness rather than a full uniform distribution randomness, if that makes sense. Um, so that's where I'm gonna go next because I do really want to add color. Like this would just look incredible, just like patches of color around. That's what I'm missing. Um, and there's so many different flowers, and I'm gonna do like these definitely. I love these things. Um, I don't know if does Page. Oh yeah, it does have them. World Painter even lets you select like the density. So if you find one, I've done it with the tree, the leaves, right? So you can have one that's like one, and another one that's like three, and another one that's one. Um, so like this is the type of thing I absolutely need, and maybe I'll for these ones I might actually just no, I need them in their own layers because it'll look way nicer with patches of them. I'm convinced. Um, but yeah, that's the next step I think is adding those flowers. Um, and then you can do that for all the flowers. Obviously, so any of these, I've done azalea before, and I also want to do firefly bushes probably. Azalea plants though, where are those? Here it is. So these things, um, I did it before and I placed them around rivers, and I might do that again because I kind of liked how that looked. I don't really like them everywhere because they're very blocky and I think they stand out too much. Maybe they'd look like nice in a patch like the flowers, but I'm thinking I'm gonna have them in one of the river layers. So what I'm thinking with these river layers, by the way, is so if like this river here, you see how there's like an inside curve to it. So I would put like a little bit of rocks here, and then have some rocks on top of it. I've done it before where, like if I go to like stone slabs, stone stairs, not the brick one, but like the standard stone, right? I've had it before where it would place like these around. Like you can pretty much go crazy with what World Painter is able to place as a layer. So I'm gonna do stuff like that. Maybe not the stairs, and a bit too. Yeah, the slabs I think is enough. Just like having a bit of that on top, obviously on top of other rocks. So I'd have like cobblestone and stone mix, whatnot, and then on top of that I'd have like a few slabs here and there. And the program's gonna have to detect all of these curve areas, and it's actually kind of interesting how I've been doing that. Um, but there's a bunch of different algorithms. So you need an algorithm that first detects the rivers, and rivers like to split, right? So like this is a separate river than this one. So I have to detect when a split is discovered and then make that into two different rivers. And then each river then gets each pixel of the center line of the river specifically gets input into a regression algorithm, which then finds a mathematical curve that follows the river, and then using that information you can then calculate the first derivative, second derivative, and then more specifically the curvature of the river. So the curvature will tell you how curvy it is, and then from there it's very easy. I can just be like, okay, if the curvature is this, then combine with some random value to make it random, because I want different types of rocks and stuff along the river, not just one, right? So I want randomness to it. Then place or create an image that has this placed there, and it's all like I have most of it actually set up. It's just not finalized. It just needs some finalizing. I can detect all the rivers, but specifically I want to add more. I have to do the part now of placing the terrain actually and creating that image mapping for the terrain that goes along the river. But yeah, that's where that part of the project is at. Once that's done, I'll do a separate video where I talk about some of those code details in more detail. For anyone who wants to use the script, it is built for Linux, unfortunately. So unless you know how to use WSL or something, it might be difficult. But um, I will discuss that in a future video once that is done. It might be a few more weeks to finish that because I am going to be on vacation for a bit here. But at some point that will come out. Um, yeah, so, and I still have to fix this stupidness also. That is going to be handled by the script. So currently, using World Machine, I just have it so if the slope is like greater than 33 degrees or something, I just ignore the river and delete it. So what ends up happening, right, is you have like a river here and it just cuts off once the slope gets too steep, and then it starts again. But obviously there's a lot of edge cases um where there's just enough area where one of these stupid blocks can get created and then it just blows up. So really what I need to do is actually increase that slope. So or decrease the slope. So make it where you can only have a river under 20 degrees. But some of the thicker rivers, like say something that wide, sometimes have a steep slope. So I don't want to cut off these. I only want to cut off the thin ones, not the thick ones. So for the thick ones, my script, or yeah, the program I wrote actually goes through and finds the width of each river. So that's already covered. So obviously what I'm going to do then is if the width is 1 and the slope is less than 30 degrees, then delete the river. And the program can do all of that slope calculation as well of the terrain. That's a pretty simple algorithm. But yeah, basically, the program will allow me to do some very finer tuned things that I think you probably could do with World Machine if you really, really, like wanted to. However, me being a programmer by job and such, I'm naturally inclined to just write my own program to do it because I can see a very clear path of how to easily do it programmatically without without needing to mess around too much in World Machine. Plus I can do I can pretty much do whatever I want, and it's a very clear method of doing it that way for me. But yeah, that's where I'm going to head with this next. Still a few things to work out. At the end, one of these maps, I don't know if it'll be this exact one because I tend to mess with it a lot, but something like this will be released publicly for free. I think on Planet Minecraft. The code will be released publicly. The World Paint Machine TMD file, I don't think I will release that entirely publicly. I may make a toned down version of it though that the user can then fill in with their own data and release that. I think that's a pretty good compromise. But everything else will be released. Obviously, and that includes the script that I used to import it into World Painter, and the config files and such. The specific terrain files, the World Painter files though that I use, those will not be public, like the schematic files and stuff, because I've spent a long time creating those. But if you've done this a bit, you'll have your own set of World Painter terrain files and such, I'm sure of it, and you can easily use yours. That's why the config file is there, so you can just swap them out. But yeah, that's it for this video. Next video will probably be in a few weeks, maybe a month or so, but yeah, see you in the next one.